Catherine stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of Kensington Palace, watching the morning light filter through the ancient oak trees. The weight of responsibility pressed against her shoulders as she reviewed the stack of research papers scattered across her desk. Each document told the same troubling story. Children across Britain were failing to reach their full potential because society had forgotten the most critical years of human development. The statistics haunted her sleepless nights. 1 in 4 children started school without the basic skills they needed. Mental health problems in young people had reached crisis levels. The gap between rich and poor children widened every year, creating divisions that would last entire lifetimes. Yet business leaders and politicians continued to focus their attention and resources on problems that seemed more immediate, more visible, more urgent. Catherine had spent 5 years building her understanding of early childhood development. She had visited nurseries in forgotten neighborhoods, sat with exhausted mothers in community centers, and listened to teachers describe classrooms full of children who arrived each morning unprepared for learning. The pattern was always the same. Children who received proper support in their earliest years thrived, while those who did not struggled throughout their lives. The princess had learned that the first 5 years of a child's life were more important than all the years that followed. During this critical period, the human brain formed 1 million neural connections every second. These connections determined everything from language skills to emotional regulation, from creativity to the ability to form healthy relationships. Children who experience trauma, neglect, or simply lack of stimulation during these years would carry the consequences forever. What frustrated Catherine most was that the solutions were known and proven. High-quality early childhood programs delivered remarkable results. Children who attended excellent nurseries were more likely to succeed in school, avoid crime, find stable employment, and contribute positively to society. The programs paid for themselves many times over through reduced costs for special education, mental health services, criminal justice, and social benefits. Yet funding for these programs remained inadequate and unstable. Local councils struggled with budget cuts. Nurseries in low-income areas closed their doors. Parents worked multiple jobs, but still could not afford quality childcare. The business community, which would ultimately benefit from a better educated workforce, remained largely disconnected from the crisis unfolding in their own communities. Catherine understood that her unique position as Princess of Wales gave her extraordinary access and influence. She could open doors that remained closed to researchers, advocates, and parents. She could command attention in boardrooms where early childhood issues had never been discussed. Most importantly, she could translate complex research into compelling human stories that move people to action. The princess began her campaign quietly, methodically building relationships with key figures in British business. She started with CEOs who had young children of their own, knowing that personal experience often opened minds more effectively than abstract arguments. She arranged private meetings in comfortable settings, sharing tea and conversation rather than formal presentations. Her first breakthrough came during a conversation with James Morrison, the CEO of a major telecommunications company. Morrison had always prided himself on his company's charitable giving, which focused primarily on education programs for teenagers. When Catherine shared stories of 3-year-olds who had never been read a bedtime story, Morrison's perspective shifted dramatically. "I've been thinking about this all wrong," Morrison admitted during their second meeting. "We've been trying to fix problems that started years before these young people ever reached our programs. It's like repairing a foundation after the house is already built." Catherine nodded, recognizing the moment when understanding clicked into place. The research shows that investing £1 in early childhood development returns £7 to society. No other investment comes close to that kind of return. Morrison leaned forward in his chair. What would it look like if businesses took this seriously? Not just writing checks, but really engaging with the issue. This question sparked Catherine's imagination. She envisioned a business community that understood its stake in early childhood development. Companies could provide high-quality childcare for their employees. They could partner with local nurseries in struggling communities. They could advocate for government policies that supported families during the most crucial years of their children's lives. Catherine began developing a comprehensive strategy to engage business leaders across different industries. She studied successful advocacy campaigns from other countries, learning how to frame early childhood investment as an economic imperative rather than simply a moral obligation. She consulted with economists who could translate the benefits into language that resonated in corporate boardrooms. The princess also recognized that she needed to understand the barriers that prevented business engagement. Many CEOs genuinely wanted to make a positive impact, but they lacked information about effective interventions. Others worried about the long-term nature of early childhood investments, which might not show returns for decades. Some simply had never considered their role in addressing social problems that seemed far removed from their daily operations. To address these concerns, Catherine began organizing small, intimate gatherings where business leaders could learn from experts and from each other. She invited neuroscientists to explain brain development in accessible terms. She brought in economists to demonstrate the financial benefits of early childhood programs. Most powerfully, she introduced executives to families whose lives have been transformed by high-quality early intervention. During one memorable evening at Clarence House, Catherine hosted 15 CEOs from major British companies. The formal dining room, with its historic portraits and crystal chandeliers, provided an elegant backdrop for conversations that would reshape how these leaders thought about their responsibilities to society. Dr. Sarah Chun, a leading researcher from Cambridge University, presented findings from a long-term study that had followed children for 30 years. The results were striking. Participants in high-quality early childhood programs were significantly more likely to graduate from university, earn higher incomes, and avoid involvement with the criminal justice system. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Chun concluded, these programs don't just change individual lives. They transform entire communities and strengthened the economic foundation of our society. The CEO of a major banking institution raised her hand. These results are impressive, but how do we know that investing in early childhood programs will produce the same outcomes in today's context? Catherine stepped forward to respond. That's exactly the right question, and it's why we need business leaders to engage with this issue. Your expertise in analyzing investments, managing complex projects, and measuring results is essential to ensuring that early childhood programs achieve maximum impact. After the formal presentation, Catherine moved through the room, facilitating smaller conversations between executives and experts. She watched as skeptical faces gradually transformed into expressions of genuine interest and commitment. By the end of the evening, 3 companies had committed to funding pilot programs, and 2 others had agreed to provide employee volunteers for existing initiatives. The princess understood that sustained change required more than individual commitments. She needed to create momentum that would spread throughout the business community, influencing not just CEOs, but entire corporate cultures. This meant developing clear pathways for engagement, measuring and publicizing results, and celebrating companies that demonstrated leadership on early childhood issues. Catherine began working with her team to design a formal framework for business engagement. The program would offer multiple ways for companies to contribute, from direct funding to employee volunteering to policy advocacy. Most importantly, it would provide clear metrics for measuring impact, allowing businesses to see concrete results from their investments. The framework also addressed practical concerns that had emerged from her conversations with executives. Many companies wanted to support early childhood development, but worried about duplicating efforts or working at cross-purposes with other organizations. The program would facilitate collaboration between businesses and established early childhood organizations, ensuring that corporate resources complemented rather than replaced existing expertise. As word of Catherine's initiative spread through business networks, she began receiving requests for meetings from companies across Britain. Manufacturing executives wanted to understand how early childhood development connected to workforce preparation. Technology leaders explored ways to use digital tools to support parent education. Retail chains considered how their community presence could strengthen local early childhood programs. Each conversation revealed new possibilities and new challenges. Catherine realized that her role was evolving from advocate to catalyst, helping to connect resources with needs and translating between the worlds of business and social services. She was building something unprecedented, a systematic approach to engaging the private sector in addressing one of society's most fundamental challenges. The princess also recognized that her efforts needed to extend beyond Britain's borders. Early childhood development was a global challenge that required international cooperation and shared learning. She began reaching out to business leaders and early childhood advocates in other countries, exploring opportunities for collaboration and knowledge exchange. During a state visit to Canada, Catherine met with executives from companies that had pioneered workplace early childhood programs. She learned about innovative financing models that made high-quality childcare accessible to working families. She studied evaluation frameworks that demonstrated the business benefits of supporting employee parents during their children's critical early years. These international connections enriched Catherine's understanding of what was possible when businesses fully embraced their role in early childhood development. She returned to Britain with new ideas and renewed determination to transform how the business community thought about its responsibility to the next generation. The princess also began to see connections between early childhood advocacy and other issues that concerned business leaders. Companies worried about skill shortages could address the problem by ensuring that more children developed strong cognitive and social foundations. Organizations focused on diversity and inclusion could support early childhood programs that helped level the playing field for children from different backgrounds. Mental health had become a major concern for employers dealing with stressed and anxious workers. Catherine helped them understand that many mental health problems originated in early childhood experiences, making prevention through early intervention far more effective than treatment after problems had already developed. As her network of business allies expanded, Catherine faced new challenges in maintaining momentum and ensuring meaningful action. Some companies made public commitments, but struggled to follow through with concrete support. Others launched programs that looked impressive, but failed to achieve measurable results. The princess learned to ask tough questions about program design and implementation. She insisted on rigorous evaluation methods that would demonstrate whether business investments were actually improving outcomes for children and families. She also worked to connect companies with evidence-based programs that had proven track records of success. Catherine's credibility with business leaders grew as they recognized her commitment to results rather than just good intentions. She was not asking them to write checks to make themselves feel better about social problems. Instead, she was inviting them to join a serious effort to address root causes of challenges that affected their own long-term interests. The transformation in how business leaders discussed early childhood development became evident during a major conference that Catherine organized 6 months after her first small dinner party. The event, held at the Royal Institution in London, brought together more than 200 executives, early childhood experts, and government officials. The conversations had evolved far beyond basic awareness of the importance of early childhood development. Business leaders now debated specific intervention strategies, shared lessons from their own pilot programs, and collaboratively developed new approaches to measuring impact. The focus had shifted from whether businesses should engage with early childhood issues to how they could engage most effectively. Catherine watched these discussions with deep satisfaction, knowing that she had helped to spark a fundamental shift in thinking. The business community was beginning to see early childhood development not as a distant social issue, but as a core component of building a thriving economy and healthy society. The success of Catherine's initial outreach efforts created new opportunities and unexpected challenges. As more business leaders expressed interest in supporting early childhood development, the princess realized she needed to move beyond individual conversations to create systemic change. The real work was just beginning. Catherine spent her mornings visiting early childhood programs across London and beyond, observing what worked and what didn't. She saw nurseries where skilled practitioners created environments that nurtured every aspect of child development. She also witnessed underfunded programs where well-meaning staff struggled with inadequate resources and limited training. During a visit to a community center in East London, Catherine met Maria Santos, a single mother working 2 part-time jobs while studying for her nursing degree. Maria's 3-year-old daughter, Sophia, attended the center's nursery program, which provided not just childcare, but comprehensive support for the entire family. "Before I found this place, I was drowning," Maria explained as she watched Sophia play with building blocks alongside other children. "I couldn't afford proper childcare, so I was leaving Sophia with whoever could watch her. She was falling behind, and I was failing my classes because I couldn't concentrate." The nursery program had transformed both their lives. Sophia received speech therapy for a developmental delay, participated in structured learning activities, and ate nutritious meals that supplemented what Maria could provide at home. Meanwhile, Maria received parenting support, help with job applications, and connections to community resources. "The difference is incredible," Maria continued. "Sophia is thriving now. She's curious, confident, and ready to start school next year. And I'm going to graduate and finally give her the stable life she deserves." Catherine understood that Maria's story represented the human impact behind all the statistics and research studies. Early childhood programs didn't just prepare children for school. They strengthened families and built stronger communities. The challenge was convincing business leaders to see these connections and invest accordingly. The princess began developing case studies that demonstrated the economic value of comprehensive early childhood support. She worked with economists to calculate the costs that society avoided when children received proper early intervention. These included reduced special education expenses, lower rates of grade repetition, decreased juvenile crime, and improved adult employment outcomes. The numbers were compelling. For every child who received high-quality early childhood support, society saved an average of £43,000 over the child's lifetime. These savings came from multiple sources: reduced social services costs, higher tax revenues from better educated adults, and decreased criminal justice expenses. Catherine also commissioned research on the specific benefits that businesses could expect from supporting early childhood development. Companies with strong early childhood programs for employees reported higher retention rates, reduced absenteeism, and improved productivity. Workers who didn't have to worry about the quality of their children's care could focus more effectively on their professional responsibilities. Armed with this evidence, Catherine began approaching leaders of major industry associations. She understood that reaching individual CEOs was important, but transforming entire industries required engaging the organizations that shaped business practices and priorities. Her meeting with the Confederation of British Industry proved particularly significant. The organization's leadership had traditionally focused on issues like taxation, regulation, and trade policy. Early childhood development had never appeared on their agenda. Catherine's presentation to the CBI boardroom was carefully crafted to speak their language. She began by outlining the workforce challenges that British businesses faced: skills gaps, recruitment difficulties, and productivity concerns. She then demonstrated how these problems connected to failures in early childhood development. Every year, British businesses invest billions of pounds in training and education programs, Catherine explained. Yet we continue to struggle with basic skills shortages that could be prevented by ensuring children receive proper support in their first 5 years of life. The board members asked probing questions about implementation costs, measurement challenges, and potential unintended consequences. Catherine had anticipated these concerns and responded with detailed research findings and examples from successful programs. The discussion continued for 2 hours, far longer than originally scheduled. By the end of the meeting, the CBI had agreed to establish a working group on early childhood development and business engagement. This marked the first time that a major business organization had formally recognized early childhood issues as a core economic priority. Similar presentations to other industry groups yielded comparable results. The British Retail Consortium began exploring how retail companies could support early childhood programs in communities where they operated. The Technology Industry Association launched an initiative to develop digital tools that could enhance early childhood education and parent support. Catherine's success in engaging business organizations created momentum that attracted government attention. Treasury officials began asking questions about the economic impact of early childhood investments. Education ministers wanted to understand how business partnerships could strengthen existing programs. The princess found herself in an unusual position, serving as a bridge between the business community and government agencies that had rarely collaborated on early childhood issues. She facilitated meetings between CEOs and civil servants, helping to align private sector resources with public policy priorities. These conversations revealed surprising areas of agreement. Both business leaders and government officials wanted to see better outcomes for children and families. Both groups recognized that current approaches were inadequate to address the scale of the challenge. Most importantly, both sides understood that sustainable solutions required partnership rather than isolated efforts. Catherine proposed the creation of a formal business-government commission on early childhood development. The commission would include equal representation from the private and public sectors, with additional input from early childhood experts and community organizations. Its mandate would be to develop a comprehensive strategy for increasing investment and improving outcomes. The announcement of the Early Childhood Investment Commission generated significant media attention and public interest. Catherine used this visibility to continue educating the broader public about the importance of the early years and the role that businesses could play in supporting children and families. During a widely televised speech to the Royal Society, Catherine outlined her vision for a society that prioritized early childhood development. She described a future where every child received the support needed to reach their full potential, where businesses recognized their stake in early childhood outcomes, and where families had access to high-quality programs regardless of their economic circumstances. This is not about charity or corporate social responsibility, Catherine emphasized. This is about building the foundation for a prosperous, equitable society. When we invest in children during their most critical years, everyone benefits: families, communities, businesses, and our entire nation. The speech sparked discussions in boardrooms, parliament, and homes across Britain. Social media buzzed with parents sharing their own stories about the importance of early childhood support. Business publications featured articles about the economic case for early intervention. Policy experts debated different approaches to increasing investment and improving program quality. Catherine recognized that this attention created both opportunity and responsibility. The business community was finally engaged, but sustained action required more than temporary enthusiasm. She needed to help companies move from awareness to implementation, from good intentions to measurable impact. Working with her team and external consultants, Catherine developed a comprehensive toolkit for business engagement in early childhood development. The toolkit included assessment instruments to help companies identify appropriate intervention strategies, implementation guides for different types of programs, and evaluation frameworks to measure success. The toolkit addressed common concerns that had emerged from her conversations with executives. Many business leaders wanted to support early childhood development, but didn't know where to start. Others worried about making commitments they couldn't fulfill. Some feared that their efforts might conflict with existing programs or create unrealistic expectations. Catherine's approach emphasized collaboration over competition. Rather than encouraging businesses to create entirely new programs, the toolkit helped companies identify ways to strengthen existing early childhood infrastructure. This included funding for staff training, facility improvements, program expansion, and family support services. The princess also worked to ensure that business investments would be sustainable and strategic rather than sporadic and superficial. She helped companies develop multi-year commitments with clear goals and regular evaluation milestones. She encouraged partnerships between multiple businesses and established early childhood organizations to maximize resources and minimize duplication. One of the most innovative aspects of Catherine's strategy was her focus on supply chain engagement. Major companies had significant influence over their suppliers and contractors, many of which employed workers with young children. By encouraging businesses to require early childhood benefits throughout their supply chains, Catherine could extend the impact of her advocacy far beyond the companies she met directly. This approach proved particularly effective in industries with complex supply relationships. A major supermarket chain, for example, began requiring its food suppliers to provide high-quality childcare for employees. The suppliers, eager to maintain their contracts, invested in programs that supported thousands of families across rural Britain. Catherine also recognized that different industries faced unique challenges and opportunities related to early childhood development. Technology companies could leverage their expertise to develop innovative educational tools and family support platforms. Construction firms could incorporate childcare facilities into their building projects. Financial services companies could create investment products that supported early childhood programs. To address this diversity, Catherine began organizing industry-specific working groups that brought together businesses with similar capabilities and challenges. These groups developed sector-focused strategies that maximized each industry's potential contribution to early childhood development. The Pharmaceutical Industry Working Group, for example, explored ways to address child health issues that affected development and learning. Companies committed to research on early intervention approaches for conditions like attention deficit disorder and autism spectrum disorders. They also supported programs that ensured children received proper medical care during critical developmental periods. The Hospitality Industry Group focused on supporting the many working parents employed in restaurants, hotels, and event venues. These businesses often operated during evenings and weekends when traditional childcare was unavailable. The working group developed innovative solutions, including mobile childcare units and partnerships with community organizations that could provide flexible family support. As these industry initiatives gained momentum, Catherine began to see the emergence of a genuine movement rather than isolated corporate efforts. Business leaders were talking to each other about early childhood development, sharing best practices, and challenging their peers to increase their level of engagement. The transformation became particularly evident during the quarterly meetings of the Early Childhood Investment Commission. These sessions, which brought together business executives, government officials, and early childhood experts, had evolved from tentative discussions to sophisticated strategic planning processes. Commission members worked collaboratively to identify barriers to effective early childhood programming and develop solutions that leveraged both private and public resources. They created new financing mechanisms that made high-quality programs accessible to more families. They established quality standards that ensured business investments produced meaningful outcomes. Most importantly, the Commission began to address systemic issues that had prevented earlier progress. These included inconsistent funding streams, inadequate practitioner training, and lack of coordination between different types of early childhood programs. Catherine watched these developments with growing confidence that her efforts were creating lasting change. The business community's engagement with early childhood development had moved far beyond symbolic gestures to substantive action with measurable impact. The princess also began to see evidence that her advocacy was influencing business practices in unexpected ways. Companies were incorporating early childhood considerations into their strategic planning processes. Investors were asking questions about early childhood impacts when evaluating potential acquisitions. Business schools were adding early childhood development to their curricula. These changes suggested that Catherine's work was achieving something rare in advocacy campaigns, a fundamental shift in how an entire sector understood its role and responsibilities. The business community was beginning to see early childhood development as integral to long-term economic success rather than peripheral to core business concerns. 18 months after launching her business engagement initiative, Catherine faced the challenge of maintaining momentum while expanding impact. The initial enthusiasm had translated into concrete commitments from dozens of companies, but the princess understood that real change required sustained effort over many years. The first comprehensive evaluation of business-supported early childhood programs revealed both encouraging progress and areas needing improvement. Children in programs with strong business backing showed significant gains in language development, social skills, and school readiness. However, the evaluation also highlighted gaps in program quality and inconsistencies in implementation approaches. Catherine convened a summit at Windsor Castle to address these findings with business leaders and early childhood experts. The historic venue provided an inspiring backdrop for conversations about building on successes while learning from challenges. We've proven that business engagement can make a real difference in children's lives, Catherine told the assembled participants. Now we need to ensure that every program supported by the business community meets the highest standards of quality and effectiveness. Dr. James Richardson from the Institute for Early Childhood Research presented detailed findings from the evaluation. The most successful programs shared several characteristics. They employed well-trained staff, used evidence-based curricula, engaged families as partners, and maintained low child-to-adult ratios. The quality of interactions between children and adults is the most important factor determining program effectiveness, Dr. Richardson explained. Business investments that focus on staff training and support consistently produce better outcomes than those that only address facilities or equipment. This insight led to a fundamental shift in how Catherine and her business partners approached early childhood investment. Rather than spreading resources across many different activities, they began concentrating on initiatives that directly improved the quality of adult-child interactions. The new strategy emphasized professional development for early childhood practitioners. Businesses funded intensive training programs that help teachers and caregivers understand child development, implement effective teaching strategies, and support families facing various challenges. Sarah Mitchell, director of a nursery in Birmingham that had received business support for staff training, described the transformation in her program. Before the training, we knew we wanted to help children, but we didn't always know the best ways to do it. Now our staff understand how to create learning opportunities in every interaction, how to support children with different needs, and how to help parents extend learning at home. The results were visible throughout Sarah's nursery. Children who had previously struggled with attention and behavior issues were now engaged and cooperative. Parents reported that their children came home excited about their day and eager to share what they had learned. Catherine also recognized that staff training alone was insufficient without addressing the broader conditions that affected early childhood work. Many skilled practitioners left the field due to low wages, limited career advancement opportunities, and lack of professional recognition. Working with business partners, Catherine helped develop career pathways that made early childhood work more attractive and sustainable. Companies provided scholarships for advanced training, mentorship programs that connected experienced practitioners with newcomers, and salary supplements that allowed programs to compete for talented staff. The princess also advocated for greater recognition of early childhood professionals within the business community. She arranged for outstanding practitioners to speak at corporate conferences, sharing their expertise with business leaders and demonstrating the sophisticated knowledge required for effective early childhood work. These efforts began to change how society viewed early childhood education. Instead of seeing it as simple babysitting, more people understood it as complex, important work that required specialized skills and deserved professional respect. Catherine's focus on program quality also led to innovation in assessment and evaluation methods. Traditional approaches to measuring early childhood program effectiveness often relied on standardized tests that didn't capture the full range of important outcomes. Working with researchers and business partners, Catherine supported development of more comprehensive evaluation tools that assessed children's social-emotional development, creativity, and critical thinking skills alongside academic readiness measures. These new assessment approaches provided richer information about program effectiveness and helped practitioners adjust their strategies to better meet individual children's needs. They also gave business funders more meaningful data about the impact of their investments. The princess understood that sustainable change required embedding early childhood priorities into business operations rather than treating them as add-on charitable activities. She encouraged companies to integrate early childhood considerations into their core business strategies. This integration took different forms across different industries. Technology companies began designing products specifically to support early childhood development. Healthcare organizations expanded their focus on preventive services for young children. Financial institutions created investment products that funded early childhood infrastructure. One particularly innovative example emerged from the construction industry. A major building company began incorporating early childhood facilities into all of its residential and commercial developments. The company recognized that access to high-quality early childhood programs increased property values and created more desirable communities. The construction company's CEO, Michael Thompson, explained his thinking during a presentation to other business leaders. "We used to think our job was finished when we handed over the keys. Now we understand that building communities requires more than just constructing buildings. We're creating environments where families can thrive." Catherine also worked to address geographic disparities in early childhood program availability. Rural and economically disadvantaged communities often lacked access to high-quality programs, even when business investment was available. To tackle this challenge, Catherine developed partnerships between urban businesses and rural communities. City-based companies adopted rural programs, providing funding and expertise while learning about the unique challenges and strengths of different communities. These partnerships created unexpected benefits for both urban and rural participants. Urban business employees who volunteered in rural programs gained new perspectives on community development and family support. Rural practitioners received professional development opportunities that might not otherwise be available. The geographic partnership model also addressed concerns about brain drain, the tendency for talented young people to leave rural communities for urban opportunities. By improving early childhood programs in rural areas, the partnerships helped create conditions that would encourage young adults to remain in or return to their home communities. Catherine's international outreach efforts also began to yield significant results. Her connections with early childhood advocates and business leaders in other countries created opportunities for knowledge exchange and collaborative innovation. A partnership with Canadian businesses led to the development of mobile early childhood programs that served isolated communities. Australian companies shared their expertise in workplace childcare design. Scandinavian organizations provided models for integrating early childhood support into social service systems. These international collaborations enriched the British approach to business engagement while positioning Britain as a global leader in early childhood innovation. Catherine organized an international conference that brought together business leaders from 15 countries to share experiences and develop new approaches. The conference generated significant media attention and political interest. Government ministers from multiple countries attended sessions on innovative financing models and evidence-based program design. The discussions led to new bilateral agreements for sharing research findings and coordinating investment strategies. Catherine also used the international platform to advocate for global businesses to prioritize early childhood development in their community investment strategies. Large multinational companies had the resources and reach to make significant impacts on early childhood outcomes in multiple countries simultaneously. The princess's advocacy with international businesses proved particularly effective because she could demonstrate concrete examples of success from British programs. Companies considering early childhood investments could see measurable results and learn from proven implementation strategies. As Catherine's initiative matured, she began focusing more attention on policy changes that would sustain and expand business engagement in early childhood development. While individual company commitments were important, systemic change required support of government policies. Working with the Early Childhood Investment Commission, Catherine advocated for tax incentives that would encourage business investment in early childhood programs. She also supported policies that would improve training standards for early childhood practitioners and ensure stable funding for high-quality programs. The princess recognized that policy advocacy required different skills and strategies than direct business engagement. She worked with policy experts to understand the complexities of government decision-making and develop proposals that would be both effective and politically feasible. Catherine's policy efforts focused on creating framework conditions that would make business engagement in early childhood development more attractive and effective. Rather than mandating specific actions, the proposed policies would provide incentives and support for voluntary business participation. One significant policy achievement was the establishment of early childhood development zones in economically disadvantaged areas. These zones provided tax advantages for businesses that invested in local early childhood programs while also offering enhanced government support for program development and staff training. The zones created concentrations of high-quality early childhood programs that could serve as models for other communities. They also demonstrated how business investment and government support could work together to address complex social challenges. Catherine also advocated for changes in business reporting requirements that would encourage companies to disclose their early childhood investments and outcomes. These reporting changes would help investors and customers make informed decisions about supporting businesses that prioritized early childhood development. The princess understood that transparency and accountability were essential for maintaining public trust in business engagement with early childhood issues. Companies that made commitments needed to follow through with concrete actions and demonstrate real impact. To support this accountability, Catherine worked with business organizations to develop voluntary standards for early childhood investment and reporting. These standards provided clear guidelines for companies while ensuring that business support translated into meaningful improvements in children's lives. The development of these standards required extensive consultation with early childhood experts, business leaders, and community representatives. The process itself became an important vehicle for building understanding and commitment across different sectors. Catherine was particularly proud that the standards emphasized outcomes for children and families rather than just input measures like funding amounts or number of programs supported. This focus on results helped ensure that business investments would create real value rather than simply generating positive publicity. As her initiative approached its second anniversary, Catherine reflected on how much had changed in the relationship between business and early childhood development. What had begun as scattered conversations had evolved into a systematic movement with clear goals, proven strategies, and measurable impact. The transformation was evident in multiple ways. Business publications regularly featured articles about early childhood investment strategies. University business programs included courses on social impact measurement. Professional conferences routinely addressed early childhood topics that would have been ignored just 2 years earlier. Perhaps most importantly, a new generation of business leaders was emerging with a fundamentally different understanding of corporate responsibility. These executives saw early childhood development not as an optional charitable activity, but as a core component of building sustainable, prosperous communities. Catherine knew that this cultural shift would have lasting impact beyond any specific program or policy initiative. Once business leaders understood their stake in early childhood outcomes, they would continue to seek ways to contribute even as economic conditions and political priorities changed. The princess also recognized that her work had implications far beyond Britain's borders. Other countries were beginning to adopt similar approaches to business engagement in early childhood development. International organizations were incorporating her strategies into their own advocacy efforts. This global influence multiplied the impact of Catherine's initiative while creating new opportunities for learning and collaboration. As more countries engaged their business communities in early childhood development, the collective knowledge base expanded and innovative approaches emerged more rapidly. Catherine understood that she had helped catalyze a fundamental shift in thinking about early childhood development, business responsibility, and societal problem solving. The challenge now was to ensure that this momentum continued to build and produce lasting change for children and families across Britain and beyond. 3 years after Catherine first began her systematic outreach to British business leaders, the transformation in early childhood support across the nation had exceeded even her most optimistic expectations. The movement she had sparked had taken on a life of its own, with businesses, communities, and families working together in ways that would have seemed impossible when she first stood at those palace windows, contemplating the challenge ahead. The most dramatic evidence of change appeared in the lives of children and families who had benefited from the new partnerships between business and early childhood programs. Catherine made it a priority to visit these families regularly, understanding that their stories would continue to motivate sustained engagement from business leaders. During a visit to Manchester, Catherine met with the Harrison family, whose experience illustrated the profound impact of comprehensive early childhood support. When she first encountered them 2 years earlier, John Harrison had been unemployed for 8 months, while his wife Emma struggled to manage their twin 4-year-old daughters, one of whom had significant developmental delays. The family's transformation began when John found employment at a manufacturing company that had embraced Catherine's call for business engagement in early childhood development. The company not only provided high-quality on-site childcare, but also connected the family with specialized support services for their daughter's developmental needs. Everything changed when John got that job, Emma explained as they watched their daughters play confidently with other children in the company's nursery. It wasn't just the steady income, though that was huge. The nursery staff identified Lucy's needs early and helped us get the right support. The company even gave John flexible hours so he could attend therapy appointments with her. Lucy, who had struggled with speech and social interaction, now communicated clearly and had formed close friendships with her peers. Her sister Sophie had thrived in the stimulating environment, showing particular aptitude for mathematics and science. Both girls were excited about starting primary school and well prepared for academic success. The Harrison family story was being replicated thousands of times across Britain as more businesses implemented comprehensive early childhood support programs. Catherine had documented many of these transformations, using them to demonstrate the concrete impact of business engagement and inspire continued investment. The princess also worked to ensure that successful programs were replicated and scaled rather than remaining isolated examples. She facilitated connections between companies that had achieved good results and those just beginning their early childhood initiatives. This knowledge sharing accelerated improvement and prevented the costly mistakes that often accompanied new program development. One of Catherine's most significant achievements was the establishment of regional early childhood business networks that brought together companies within specific geographic areas. These networks shared resources, coordinated programming, and advocated collectively for supportive policies. The Southwest Regional Early Childhood Business Network exemplified the potential of collaborative approaches. 63 companies across Devon, Cornwall, and Somerset had joined together to create a comprehensive early childhood support system that served both their employees and the broader community. The network operated shared facilities that provided emergency childcare when regular arrangements fell through. They funded mobile programs that served rural areas where individual companies couldn't justify standalone facilities. Most importantly, they had created a career development pipeline that helped local young people train for early childhood professions while ensuring programs had well-qualified staff. Rachel Thompson, the network's coordinator, described the evolution from individual company efforts to collaborative regional programming. Initially, each company was trying to solve early childhood challenges on their own. We had duplicate programs, gaps in coverage, and no way to achieve economies of scale. Working together, we could provide much higher quality support while making more efficient use of resources. The regional network model proved so successful that similar organizations emerged across Britain. Catherine played a key role in connecting these networks and facilitating the sharing of best practices. She also worked with government officials to ensure that regional networks received appropriate policy support and recognition. Catherine's efforts to engage business leadership had also produced significant changes in how companies thought about their workforce development strategies. Rather than focusing exclusively on training and skills development for current employees, forward-thinking companies began investing in the early childhood experiences that would shape their future workforce. This longer-term perspective led to innovative partnerships between businesses and educational institutions. Technology companies worked with nurseries to introduce age-appropriate experiences with digital tools. Manufacturing firms supported early childhood programs that emphasized hands-on learning and problem-solving skills. Financial services companies funded programs that taught basic numeracy concepts through play-based activities. These partnerships created pathways that connected early childhood experiences to later educational and career opportunities. Children who participated in business-supported programs often maintained connections with sponsoring companies through mentorship programs, internships, and scholarship opportunities. The princess recognized that this pipeline approach addressed one of the most persistent challenges facing British businesses: skills shortages and workforce development needs. By investing in early childhood development, companies were helping to create the capable, confident workers they would need in future decades. Catherine also worked to ensure that business engagement in early childhood development contributed to broader social goals, including reducing inequality and strengthening communities. She was particularly concerned that business support should reach children and families who face the greatest challenges rather than only benefiting those who already had advantages. To address this concern, Catherine advocated for targeted investment in programs serving low-income communities and families facing multiple stressors. She helped develop funding models that provided additional resources for programs working with children who had experienced trauma, neglect, or other adverse experiences. The targeted approach required businesses to make longer-term commitments and accept that results might take more time to achieve. However, companies that embraced this challenge often reported that the experience deepened their understanding of community needs and strengthened their relationships with local residents. Catherine's advocacy also influenced how businesses approached their supply chain relationships and community investment strategies. Major corporations began requiring suppliers to demonstrate their commitment to early childhood development as part of contract negotiations. This requirement extended the reach of early childhood support far beyond the direct employees of large companies. The supply chain approach proved particularly effective in industries with extensive subcontracting relationships. A major infrastructure company, for example, required all of its construction partners to provide early childhood benefits for their employees. This requirement created early childhood support for thousands of workers who would not otherwise have had access to high-quality programs. Catherine also supported innovative financing mechanisms that made early childhood investment more attractive to businesses while reducing risks for program providers. Social impact bonds allowed companies to fund early childhood programs with payments tied to achieved outcomes rather than simple service delivery. These outcome-based financing models aligned business interests with program effectiveness while providing sustainable funding for high-quality services. Children and families benefited from improved programs, while businesses received clear evidence that their investments were producing meaningful results. The princess worked with financial institutions to develop additional investment products that supported early childhood infrastructure development. These included low-interest loans for nursery construction, equipment leasing programs for early childhood providers, and venture capital funds focused on early childhood innovation. As business engagement in early childhood development matured, Catherine began focusing more attention on ensuring that the movement would continue to grow and evolve without requiring her constant involvement. She worked to develop leadership capabilities within the business community and create institutional structures that would sustain progress over the long term. The establishment of the British Business Early Childhood Foundation represented a major milestone in this institutionalization process. The foundation, governed by a board of business leaders and early childhood experts, would coordinate ongoing business engagement while advocating for supportive policies and funding. Catherine played a key role in selecting the foundation's initial leadership team and developing its strategic priorities. However, she deliberately stepped back from day-to-day operations, recognizing that sustainable change required business ownership rather than royal leadership. The Foundation's first major initiative was a comprehensive research program that would track the long-term outcomes of business-supported early childhood programs. This research would provide crucial evidence about the effectiveness of different approaches while identifying opportunities for continued improvement. The princess also supported the development of professional development opportunities for business leaders who wanted to deepen their engagement with early childhood issues. Executive education programs, professional certification courses, and peer learning networks helped ensure that business commitment to early childhood development was based on solid knowledge rather than good intentions alone. Catherine's international advocacy efforts had also reached a new level of sophistication and impact. She worked with global business organizations to develop international standards for corporate early childhood investment. These standards provided frameworks that multinational companies could implement across different countries while adapting to local needs and regulations. The international standards also facilitated knowledge sharing between businesses operating in different markets. Companies could learn from successful approaches in other countries while contributing their own innovations to the global knowledge base. Catherine participated in major international conferences where business leaders from around the world shared their experiences with early childhood investment. These events generated significant media attention and political interest, helping to spread the movement beyond Britain's borders. The princess was particularly proud of the emerging leadership from business executives who had become passionate advocates for early childhood development. These leaders were now speaking at conferences, writing articles, and mentoring other executives who wanted to engage with early childhood issues. This organic leadership development ensured that the movement would continue to grow and evolve even as Catherine's role evolved. The business community had developed its own champions and experts who could carry the work forward with credibility and expertise. Catherine also recognized that her initiative had influenced thinking about corporate social responsibility and business purpose more broadly. Companies across many industries were adopting more systematic approaches to social impact measurement and community engagement, often using early childhood development as a model for effective business community partnerships. The emphasis on evidence-based approaches, long-term commitment, and outcome measurement that characterized successful early childhood business engagement was being applied to other social issues, including environmental sustainability, education reform, and economic development. As Catherine reflected on the journey from her initial conversations with business leaders to the comprehensive movement that now existed, she felt deep satisfaction about what had been achieved. The lives of countless children and families had been improved through the partnerships she had helped to create. More importantly, she had helped to establish new ways of thinking about business responsibility, community development, and societal problem-solving. The business community now understood that investing in early childhood development was not charity, but sound economic strategy that benefited everyone. The transformation was perhaps most evident in the language that business leaders used when discussing their company's role in society. Rather than talking about giving back or corporate social responsibility, they now spoke about building human capital, strengthening communities, and creating shared value. This shift in language reflected a deeper change in understanding about the relationship between business success and social well-being. Companies had moved beyond seeing social issues as external problems requiring charitable responses to recognizing them as integral aspects of creating sustainable business environments. Catherine knew that the work was far from finished. Significant challenges remained in ensuring that all children had access to high-quality early childhood support regardless of their family's circumstances or geographic location. The business community's engagement, while substantial, still needed to expand to reach every child who could benefit. However, the foundation had been laid for continued progress. The business community now had the knowledge, experience, and institutional structures necessary to sustain and expand their commitment to early childhood development. The movement had become self-sustaining, capable of growing and evolving without depending on royal advocacy. The princess understood that her role would continue to evolve as the movement matured. Rather than initiating new business engagement, she would increasingly focus on ensuring that business investments continued to produce meaningful outcomes for children and families while advocating for policy changes that would support continued progress. Catherine also planned to expand her focus beyond Britain to support the development of similar business engagement movements in other countries. Her experience and expertise could help accelerate progress internationally while contributing to global efforts to improve early childhood outcomes. As she looked toward the future, Catherine felt confident that her work had created lasting change that would benefit generations of children and families. The business community's understanding of its role in early childhood development would continue to influence corporate behavior long after specific programs and policies had evolved. Most importantly, she had helped to establish the principle that early childhood development was too important to be left to government and charitable organizations alone. The entire society, including its most powerful economic institutions, had a stake in ensuring that every child received the support needed to thrive during the most critical years of human development.